Welcome back, everyone, and hello to any new listeners out there. We're so excited for you to join us on today's episode of the Stock Show Sisters podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Jodi Sterle, joining us from Iowa. She is a Harmon Endowed Professor in the Department of Animal Science at Iowa State University and a leader deeply committed to undergraduate teaching and learning. In addition to serving as Associate Department Chair for Teaching, Dr. Sterle works as a Provost Faculty Fellow for High Impact Practices, helping expand meaningful hands-on learning opportunities for students. Today, Dr. Sterle and I dive into career exploration, the importance of extracurricular involvement, and her insights into being a mom while building a successful career. With a professional journey rooted in education, mentorship, and service to the livestock industry, Dr. Sterle brings an incredibly thoughtful perspective on building a fulfilling career in agriculture, both inside and outside the classroom. Join me in welcoming Dr. Sterle. Dr. Sterle, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have you on to share some of your experiences and advice for women in the stock show industry. Without further ado, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what your current role in the industry is?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I grew up on a small diversified livestock farm in southeastern Michigan. And I grew up showing livestock, both cattle, sheep, and pigs as well, and just fell in love with the agriculture industry. But it was shortly after the farm crisis of the 1980s. And so my parents were not excited about both of my brother or I being involved in agriculture. And so they really pushed me towards further education, and I knew I didn't want to be a veterinarian. So that's how I ended up in academia. I went to Michigan State University and completed an animal science degree, and along the way just had some amazing mentors that really guided me and pushed me in the right direction to go to do a master's and a PhD in swine reproductive physiology at the University of Missouri. Then ended up on faculty at Texas A&M University for about 14 years. And then now am currently here at Iowa State University going on 15 years. My current role is I have a teaching appointment, but I also manage our undergraduate education and our undergraduate program for about 1,000 students.
That is phenomenal. I have been able to hear your background a couple of times now, but each time I'm just blown away by how the mentorship and your experiences led into one another so flawlessly and brought you to where you are today. So it's definitely encouraging for young women like myself that although I might not see the path, there is definitely one for us. So thank you for sharing that.
There's definitely times I wondered if I was on the right path too, but like you mentioned, it was really all about mentors and taking advice and listening to advice and really trusting in the right people that kind of made the path what it is today.
You did mention that you've held several different roles, even coming to Texas and being at Texas A&M. So can you maybe shed a little bit more light on those positions and what your professional journey has taught you overall?
Sure. It was a little different time when I first started, and there were not as many women in, I would say, obvious roles in agriculture. We were always there, but maybe not as obvious. There were not as many women as undergraduates. There was not nearly as many women faculty. But when I first came to Texas A&M, I had a 100% extension appointment and served as the only state swine extension specialist for the state. That included working with large commercial farms in the Panhandle to the over 50,000 youth exhibitors at the major stock shows in Texas, all the way down to county shows. After I was there about a year, I really wanted to get back in the classroom and work more with our undergraduates there. And so I added a teaching appointment as well.
That's awesome. Shamelessly, I have to ask what your favorite part of being at Texas A&M was. I know we have some listeners that are considering different schools. Since you have experience at Texas A&M, do you have any fun traditions or anything that you maybe miss now that you're not here anymore?
I always miss stock show season just because it's the opposite of show season here in the Midwest. I'm always seeing social media posts and stuff when it's the downtime for us here. I did spend about 135 days a year at one of the major stock shows, so that was a lot at a time when I was raising young kids and stuff, but I loved it. So I probably missed the stock show season, but I definitely missed the people.
Oh, love that. It is definitely a beast of its own here in Texas. Thank you for highlighting that. As a professional in academia or just in general, were there any skills early in your career that you see now were so essential for you to learn at a young age that have set you up for success that you encourage other young professionals to learn and to put themselves in experiences to grow those skills?
Looking back, I feel like there was probably many skills that I learned along the way, but one of them was just resilience or grit, not to take things personally and just to put your head down, do the work, put the time in, and trust the process. So it's no different than preparing for an athletic career or a big game. You just have to put the work in ahead of time, pay your dues, and eventually things will happen. My favorite saying to tell my students is the world is run by those who show up. And sometimes you got to do a lot of showing up before somebody hands you an opportunity. But if you are not there, you're not there to get that opportunity either. Sometimes it's good of you don't know what you don't know too, and you just keep trying and just put your head down and do the work.
Amen to that. I remember the first time I heard you say that the world is run by those who show up, and I have to share that ever since I heard that, I have used that phrase many times in both professional and personal situations and with friends and family. So it definitely impacted me, and I can only imagine how many other students it has impacted also.
Oh, that makes me smile. I certainly did make up that saying, but it is definitely one I live by.
I love it so much. You did share that you were an extension for a bit and then said that you missed working with undergraduate students. So, what do you find most rewarding about working with undergraduate students?
I love developing leaders and just helping students find their passion, helping them open doors to opportunities, and thinking back to what my mentors did for me and trying to pay it forward. And really, nobody does this alone, and it is way too hard to not use your resources. So I try to be a resource for students. And a lot of that occurs outside of the classroom, right? I love teaching, but it's really the development of students in clubs or extracurricular activities or working with them as their advisor, that where you can really see the light come on and see that they have found their passion, and then helping them not only find it, but then what's the next step and how do they get to achieve it.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I always joke with people that comment about students being involved outside of the classroom and maybe not seeming to prioritize their education, but I've always said that not to let the classroom get in the way of your education, because while we are here to learn and to be in the classroom, there's so many opportunities to grow and network outside of that classroom that are just as impactful. So definitely encourage everyone to take advantage of those. Like Dr. Sterle was saying, all of the clubs and the internships and just different activities that are going on campus. Really lean into those and put yourself out there, because that's where you're going to see the most growth.
Definitely agree.
Wonderful. And I did want to ask you, as someone who has been in academia since you have been in school, how has your approach to teaching changed throughout your career? Because I know we have a few aspiring professors and maybe teachers out there. As you've learned and grown as a professor and as a mentor, how has your approach changed?
I think students have changed over time, and you have to meet them where they are, but also get them out of their comfort zone. And I think teaching is a constantly evolving process. Not only does the science evolve and change and progress, which I love, so you're always learning, but the students are always changing as well. I think over time, I've learned to become a little bit more authentic and definitely more transparent with my students, and not feeling like it has to be a performance or a show, that you can be human and just take them on that educational journey, even though you might be learning right alongside them.
That is a good point. I can definitely think of a handful of professors that have had the biggest impact on me and that I'm sure I will remember for a long time. And they they were not the perfect professors and they didn't have the best classroom materials, but they were real and they were raw and they showed up to class each day as themselves, and definitely appreciated that as a student. So I couldn't agree more with being authentic as a professor and a mentor. You have spent some time in extension and in the classroom, but I was curious from an academic's perspective, why is research important and how can industry people play a role in the research process? I think that myself growing up, I did grow up in a very rural community, but research was not talked about much. I don't believe there were a whole lot of farms or ranches that were involved in any part of the research process. But now that I've come to college and realized how impactful it is for everyone from government to salespeople to students being able to learn about the industry, can you maybe shed a little bit of light on why it's so important and how industry people, whether that's exhibitors or breeders, can play a role in that research process?
Sure. We always think of research like a white lab coat and goggles and working in a lab. And really, research is either proving something wrong, which that's what science is, just proving the status quo wrong and finding out new information, or it's just being curious. And it doesn't always have to be in a traditional lab. Sometimes it can be surveys, it could be looking at trends, it could be looking at just processes and ways to gain some data to make things better. Today, with using a lot of coding and big data and data analytics, we're using a lot of industry data, especially in my industry, which is the swine industry, to look at trends and develop predictive models so that we can improve whether it's animal welfare, profitability. So I think it's thinking outside the box of what research really is. And like I said, sometimes it's just getting data on a current process. For example, like maybe how we run a show, or maybe how we move pigs into San Antonio or Houston, and then using that data to make an educated, scientifically based decision to improve. And so I think that there's lots of ways to be involved in research without what we think of as traditional research. Traditional research is super important too. And sometimes it's hard for students to understand, as it was for me when I was first getting started, of it's awesome and it's good to prove the current status quo or the current process inefficient or wrong, or to make better on it. We always think of trying to develop new things, but we don't always think that those new things could just be an improvement on what we currently have as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I had one of my professors recently share that he views the purpose of the College of Ag and Life Sciences, and I'm sure this is applicable across the country. The overarching goal of every single major and all of the faculty and staff and students and the research that we all do is to do more efficiently. And I think that translates pretty well into the agricultural industry, and just we have more mouths to feed each year, and how do we feed them more efficiently? How do we produce more crops? How do we get more yield on animals and things like that? That's a great point that you make, is we're already doing a lot of great things in the industry. How can we do them better? How can we do them more efficiently? How can we save costs? Things like that. Such a great point, and I think that it's imperative for everyone to at least understand why research is done, and that if you are asked to be a part of it, you can help so many people, so many producers along the way. So I do want to transition a little bit into some of your other positions and your involvement on campus. One of your positions you had mentioned deals a lot with extracurricular and outside the classroom activities. So can you tell us how experiences like study abroads, we had already touched on undergraduate research a bit, and student organizations shape students beyond the classroom? Why are those so important, and why are you such an advocate for them?
I am a huge advocate for those high impact practices that really not only are they fun and the most enjoyable part probably about being on a college campus, but they build networking, they build relationships. You get to know your professors outside the classroom. I've led 10 short study abroads. We call them travel courses here. So there's a 3 credit class, and part of that, those credits are traveling. I like to go the day after finals are out in May and get back by Memorial Day so students can still go on internship, but I've led some over spring breaks and other things like that. So I've led 6 trips to the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, and Wales, looking at the development of the purebred breeds of livestock. So anything from Clydesdale horses to Angus and Hereford cattle. That's my baby. And I developed that in 2014, I guess, to go. And so I've led 6 trips there with students. For that, I take 24 students at a time. And then, like I said, they have class all semester. So they're learning about the development, they're learning about culture. I've led an international trade focused trip to South Korea. I've been to Portugal. We did a swine trip to Japan and Thailand. And so not only do I get to travel, it's not a vacation hauling almost 30 students around, but you get to see things you would never see as a tourist, and it widens your worldview. And I think that's very transformative for students. Putting them in charge of something like hosting a national black and bridal convention that has a $120,000 budget. When you start thinking about what these students are developing and what you can put on a resume, that's a difference, right? So they're learning teamwork, they're learning how to manage people, they're learning how to handle budgets, they're learning stress. And how to manage that stress and getting through to pull off something that is bigger than themselves. And so no matter what it is, whether it's traveling, which of course is near and dear to my heart and so much fun, but it could be being in charge of a committee or putting on a futurity or a show or just being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Those are the skills you just can't learn in the classroom. They do take a tremendous amount of time and effort on both the students and the professors or whoever's helping you put those activities and pulling them off. But that's the rewarding part of what we all do. And like I said, pulling something across the finish line and doing a good job with it, there's no other feeling in the world like that. But the life skills you just can't get anywhere else.
That is such a good way to put it, and it can also encourage everyone to get involved in their communities if they're not in school anymore or didn't take that path, because all of those opportunities to build that selfless service aspect of your leadership, and it also just builds so much confidence, like you said. I know for certain I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't participate in the student organizations and experiences that I've had. They have definitely shaped me professionally and personally. So I attribute a lot of who I am to those experiences and highly encourage everyone to take advantage of those opportunities. You mentioned some of those study abroad or your international experiences. Which one was your favorite and why?
Oh, that's easy. My favorite is my purebred livestock development course to England, Scotland, and Wales. I've loved all of them that I've done, but that one, like I said, is my baby. And I think it brings a lot of history, a lot of culture, and purebred livestock all together in one. And having that class with it, we can really dive into that and get students ready, not only ready to travel, but ready to understand the bigger picture. When they go, I think it's a much more transformative and it's a deeper experience because they're ready to go. Like I said, I've taken that trip 6 times and we'll be doing that again next May in 2027. So I look back and a lot of them are industry leaders now, and they are friends and they call on each other, and you travel 17 days with 24 people. You get to know them pretty well, and they all have a common passion, and it's just been so rewarding. That's just my baby, and I'm not leading it this spring. I had some other responsibilities to take care of, and I'm already got the travel bug and ready to go back.
I love that. I was able to go to Scotland on a study abroad 2 years ago as well, and it is a beautiful country, and it's so interesting to learn how different their systems and laws are compared to ours in the United States, just from their production agriculture to their land ownership and all of the things. Super interesting. I must ask though, do you require your students to try any of the foods there? I'm thinking of one in particular.
You're probably thinking of haggis. Yes. We actually have a really cool British restaurant here in Ames. And so sometimes if students are very worried about the food, we did this with my Thailand trip and our South Korea trip as well. One of the class periods will either bring in food or we'll go to that restaurant and give it a try. I'm always like, try it once. What's a bite? And so if you don't like it, there's always other things to do and try, but it's not required.
I love that. That's awesome approach to that, is to take them out to have a meal there before you leave.
It's amazing that food is often some of their biggest anxiety before they travel. And no matter, I think that I've been to, I don't know, 16 countries or something with students, and that's interesting. That's really what they find out, but then they always find something, right? And so it's one more thing that a challenge you've gotten through and a hurdle you've overcome is I wouldn't let that keep you on the couch just because you think you might not like one kind of food or another.
That is for sure. I did travel with a few students that were a little bit more on the picky side, so it made it a little bit difficult. But like you said, there's always something that you can find that appeases your appetite. So don't let that hold you back, because there's so many opportunities to travel abroad. And I think too, a lot of students, at least coming into college, like myself, I assumed that study abroad programs were only semester long. So when I found out that I didn't have to take an entire semester off or live abroad in Italy for 6 months, I was pretty ecstatic. So definitely encourage everyone to check out all of the opportunities that their college has to offer, because there's definitely a lot more out there that can align with your schedule.
Absolutely. And we're now getting alumni that value their experiences and have had some of those experiences, so they're giving back. So I'm sure this is true at other schools, but here at Iowa State, we have quite a bit of financial assistance to pay. It won't pay for your whole trip, and you still need to save up for it and plan ahead, but it doesn't have to be the sole burden of the student for the cost of travel. And we do a lot to keep the cost down as much as we can as well. So I always tell students, you'll never travel that cheap again. You'll never travel with this group of students again and make those relationships, and you will never see things that you will see on a study abroad trip if you were a tourist. Sometimes, once again, it's just getting out of that comfort zone and really planning to just jump in with both feet.
100%. That is such a good point. And I think that really goes for any kind of opportunities in school, is that there are so many people that want to see you succeed and are willing to support you financially and in other ways. So don't let that hold you back from taking advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, I like what you just said. And I think for especially younger students, they don't realize what a big cheering section they have. And sometimes there are people that you're not even thinking about who are in your corner and want to see you succeed, or will go out of their way to help you if you just ask or show interest. And I love that you said there are so many people that want to see you succeed, because I'm in the people business. Pigs are my thing, but I'm in the people business of developing that next set of leaders to take our industry to the next level. And you can't do that without people.
Exactly. No matter which industry you're in, if you're not in the people business, then you probably won't get very far, because you need people to do everything. 100% agree on that. We've got to work together and to make the world a better place and to make each other better people. Love that you touch on that. Speaking of other people, I do want to touch on how wonderfully you have. I don't know if balance is a good word, but I don't think that many people anymore believe in the work life balance. But you have simultaneously been a wife, a mom, a professor, a mentor. So you've built this successful career while being a wife and a mom. What has that looked like for you?
First of all, no one does it alone, right? Just like you don't go through the rest of your life alone. And so I've had a great partner in my husband who, especially when I had a heavy travel load at some points of my career, we have two sons. Jake is married and He finished his undergraduate degree here at Iowa State in animal science and international agriculture, and then did our concurrent MBA program. He currently is the director of industry development for the National Pork Producers Council. Jackson is working, he did his undergraduate here at Iowa State in animal science and international agriculture as well, although they quickly remind me that they are not alike, even though they followed a similar path. But he is currently working on his master's degree in animal science, looking at data analytics and big data in the swine industry as well. So I'm really super proud that both of them have ended up in the industry, and they've decided to do different paths with similar backgrounds and similar degrees. They are both have significant others in their lives that are also in agriculture. My husband's an animal scientist as well. So I think that mentality and that background has helped with whatever balance was, but it didn't come without sacrifices. And I think you just have to set your boundaries, decide where your priorities are, and then there's always a consequence, right? So if you decide to stay out and travel on a work job, maybe you miss something at home. If you stay at home, maybe you miss an opportunity at work. And so it's not without consequence, but I think you just have to decide where your priorities are. And those change constantly, and they definitely change with different stages of your life. I remember being very pregnant and very ill at San Antonio Stock Show when I probably should have not been there. But looking back at whether did I have to make a name for myself, and did I have to prove something, where probably the second child I wouldn't have felt that pressure. So sometimes you just have to think it through, use your mentors, decide what sacrifices you're going to make and where your priorities are, and then you have to let the chips fall where you may and not look back. No regrets. You have to have a team. You have to have understanding. We were very transparent with our children with here's what our jobs are, and this is why we can do what we do and as a family. But there's going to be some things that you either miss or you give up on both sides of that coin. So I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it was all roses and it was easy, but I also wouldn't change it. And I've asked my kids several times, would you change anything? With when I was on the road, they developed a wonderful relationship with their dad that only the guys in the family had. And they still talk about some of the things that they experienced when mom was gone. And so I had to be okay with that. And my boundaries were, especially when I was on the road a bunch, if I could make it home by 2 a.m., I didn't get a hotel room and drive the next morning. That was my limit. And if I could get up and leave by between 4 and 5, I didn't go the night before. And that I was there to put him to bed and there to see him wake up as much as I could. Like I said, nothing's without sacrifice and nothing's without consequences. But if you have the right team and you're all on the same page, you can make almost anything happen.
Wow, that was gold advice. I thank you so much for shedding some light on that and just giving that advice and your experiences to other women that are hoping to build a meaningful career while also prioritizing their family, because I think that is something that a lot of women see themselves doing, and it's something that's a lot more doable in today's world than, generation.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of technologies and lots of opportunities, but just like with your undergraduate career and just like starting off in a new job, like nobody does alone. And so you have to make sure everybody's on the right page and appreciate what other people are doing to sacrifice as well. I'm not going to say it wasn't easy. Sometimes I look back on it now that I'm past that stage. That was really hard, but I didn't think it was as hard then that I probably look back on it and think it is hard now. Once again, you put your head down and you do what you think is best and you don't look back.
That grit, that is digging in when it's the hardest and just pushing through. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I'll just add one other thing. I think the industries that we're in and the agriculture industry in general is very family oriented as well. And so part of the reason I think I was able to do some of the things that I was able to do is I was able to take them with me and allow them to be a part of what I was doing, which ultimately had an effect of them also staying in agriculture and making a career of agriculture, which is near and dear to both my husband and my heart. It's more than just this is work and this is home. We were able to integrate that creatively and sometimes crazily, but I think that we wouldn't have done it any other way except to raise our children in the barn and raise our children alongside us as much as possible.
Oh, 100%. You hear judges say it all the time in their grand drive speeches that the barn is the best place to raise kids, but generally speaking, agriculture as a whole is 100% the best place to have a career and a family at the same time, and is definitely the best place to raise kids that can have an inside look at your career. And I think that's so important too. I know myself, I grew up, like I mentioned, in a pretty rural community, but the exposure that I had to different careers in the industry was very limited. So taking your kids along with you and exposing them to different opportunities that they can have so they can also stay in the industry like your sons have done is super impactful and can really imprint on children in ways that you would never know, and just introducing them to people so that they can have those connections once they are out in the industry looking for jobs.
Absolutely.
I would like to kind of wrap up all of this from a different perspective. You and I have both shared our backgrounds and passions for the industry, but I do want to touch a little bit on maybe some advice that you would have for students or for young girls that love agriculture and maybe are involved in 4-H and FFA, but they aren't exactly sure what career to pursue. So if you've had any students like that previously that maybe don't come from an agricultural background, or they're just not entirely sure what career to pursue, but they love agriculture, what do you tell them?
That would be most of my students, that they don't know where they want to go or exactly what they want to do. And that's okay. We know that the current generation is going to change jobs more than any generation in history. We know that they're risk takers and they're not afraid to jump. I don't think you should know everything right now. And I never, ever thought that a Michigan girl would end up in Texas. I never thought I would be teaching. I never thought, actually, I grew up not even really loving pigs. I was a beef, cattle, and sheep girl for a long time, and it was my brother who liked pigs. And so I think it's going back to that, just keep showing up, keep putting in the time and the work, and clues will happen. I talk to students that are visiting campus almost every day, and I say it's all like a puzzle. Like, you know what the picture looks like on the box, and then you put the outside edges together and it takes some shape, but you aren't going to finish that puzzle until decades from now. So every experience that you have is a piece of the puzzle. It might make the pathway a little clearer. It might throw a curveball, or you might not know exactly where that piece fits. Like I said, the world is run by those who show up, and every time you show up, you probably are going to get a little insight into maybe where that passion is, or maybe where those opportunities are. So you have to keep your ears open to both your heart, but also to what's going on around you, what people are saying around you, even if they're not saying the exact words, and just ask questions, be curious, show up, and things will happen, and opportunities sometimes pop out of nowhere. But once again, if you're not there and if you're not engaged or if you're not paying attention, you could miss them.
That is so true. I love the example you give of the puzzle. That is a great way to visualize how all the pieces fit together in the end, and that you might start out with the four corner pieces and have no idea what the middle of the puzzle looks like, but eventually they'll all piece together. So I love that example that you share.
I often give a talk called The Web We Weave, and to think about connections. And so I was just thinking about this podcast and how it all started. I was thinking about the fact that Rachel was one of my students at A&M. And then I was thinking that you and I met at showpig.com camp. And so once again, like, you never know, like, when that person that you have this brief meeting with or this brief experience with, or maybe not so brief, but that can really come back into your life and have an opportunity down the road. And so I also tell students all the time, like, think about where your mentors are and how they've been down the path before you, but don't forget to turn around and look who's behind you, because there's probably someone who wishes they were you. Even though you're trying to keep pushing forward, there's someone behind you who wishes they were exactly in the spot that you are. And so I think that's what makes agriculture, and especially the livestock industry, just so amazing, is the people and those relationships and building that web, building that network. And sometimes it's just a brief conversation. Sometimes it's a trip or an experience or a camp. And sometimes it's a lifelong mentor or friendship. So I was just thinking about that as we were talking about all those different connections between you and I, and how many common people we know and how we ended up here.
Right. That is a good point. I had been meaning to touch on that and how we knew each other, but I do actually remember the web we weave talk, and people always say the world is small, but I think that while that's true, I think it's even more important to think about how big your web can be and how intertwined everyone is, especially in our industry. Everyone knows each other, and if they don't, then they probably will soon. Making sure that you're having positive interactions with everyone and treating everyone with respect is also super important. I would like to touch on, you had mentioned that you get to talk to prospective students when they're visiting campus. How can those students explore different interests without feeling behind? And I know in some cases students will change their major or maybe do an internship that shows them that's not the career they want to pursue anymore. So what is your advice? Which direction do you push students that, again, aren't sure what career they want to pursue, but want to explore different things without it feeling purposeless?
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to sound contradictory, because I think you have to be flexible, but I also think, and I think this is where students get frustrated and maybe make decisions quicker than they should or give up quicker than they should. Sometimes you have to give it a chance. You're not going to have the perfect job when you graduate from high school. You're not going to have the job that you retire from or the position you retire from when you graduate from college. And sometimes you have to be the low man on the totem pole, or sometimes you have to be the newbie for a while and figure things out before you reap the benefits of what you're doing. I loved telling students, oh, just go try new things. But at the same time, don't forget to be in that moment and to really give it a chance before you cut bait and jump and say, well, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Because sometimes you just got to pay your dues for a while before the benefits really roll in. And so patience is something that I didn't have and probably still don't have enough of, but certainly didn't have it at that stage of my career. But looking back, even my bad experiences ended up helping me make decisions down the path. So it's never a waste. I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth or trying to give two different pieces of advice, but try new things, but at the same time, give them a chance to bloom and develop and see where they go.
Oh, 100%. I think those answers align pretty well together. I have always told myself not to leave until you've learned something, even though it might be learning that this isn't the place for you. You do have to give it a chance, like you said. And, at the end of the day, you will walk out with some type of gain, whether it's a skill or a person in your corner. So don't give up on things too quickly. Be curious, be adaptable, and seek out opportunities to learn skills that can help you wherever you may go next. Dr. Sterle, I think that's pretty much all of the questions I had for you, but was there anything else you wanted to add and share with our listeners today?
I would just say that there's never been a better time to be where you're at. There's so many opportunities in agriculture and animal agriculture. And if you have a passion outside of agriculture, that's okay too. Agriculture touches everyone, and the experiences that you have and are experiencing right now and the opportunities you have right now will serve you well no matter what you decide to do, where you decide to go, or how you decide to contribute to society. But if you do decide to be in animal agriculture, It's never been broader. It's never been more fulfilling. It's never paid as well as it does now. And the opportunities are just endless. It was just such an exciting time to be on the cusp of starting a career, and just keep your eyes open and hold on for the ride, because it's going to be exciting.
Amen to that. Well, Dr. Shirley, to wrap us up, I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. If you have one, what is your favorite swine breed?
That's easy. Durox.
Okay, I like that. What is something you can't function without during shows?
Caffeine and patience, both of which I wish I had more of.
You can never be over caffeinated. What is your favorite song of all time, or maybe a current jam that you have?
So I teach Monday, Wednesday mornings. I teach a class at 7:45 a.m. So I have a whole playlist that I'm almost embarrassed to share, but it does have the Rocky soundtrack with Eye of the Tiger. It has a little Nelly in there. It has The Greatest Showman. But I have to listen to that if I'm going to be excited to teach by 7:45. I have about a 25-minute drive in, so that's my jam.
I love that. It sounds right up my alley. A little bit of hype music can never do you wrong.
That's right.
Awesome. Dr. Shirley, for our listeners out there that may have any follow-up questions or interest in any of the programs that you lead, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm here in Kildee Hall at the Department of Animal Science at Iowa State University, and I do have a social media presence, although not as much as some others. So if you Google search or whatever, we're always happy to talk to you, host you on campus, see you at the state fair, other livestock shows. Please reach out. I'm more than happy to answer questions and would love to have some of you join us here on campus.
Wonderful. Dr. Sterle's career is a powerful reminder that agriculture needs educators and mentors just as much as it needs producers and industry leaders. Through her commitment to students, meaningful learning experiences, and real-world impact, she shows there is no single path to success in agriculture, only a willingness to learn, grow, and serve. For anyone navigating uncertainty in their career journey, her story is proof that purpose often reveals itself one step at a time. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode, and be sure to follow our page and join our group on Facebook, where you can get updates about the podcast, ask questions, and even share motivation with other young girls and women in the stock show industry. Until next time, sisters, this is your host, Riki Nardiello, and I hope you have a fabulous week.